Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Creator in Conversation. I'm your host, Eoin McCauley, and today's episode we're doing a review of season two. As this episode goes out, we will have concluded our second season of Creator in Conversation with the finale featuring Howard Mackey. That episode has not yet been aired at this point in time when I'm recording, but we're currently, as of this episode, just at the end of June, and this will go out likely in the first week of July. Creating Conversation began in January 2025, so we're essentially a year and a half. And I just want to take an opportunity to review the podcast. Back during episode 50, we did a similar episode where I just went through talking about behind the scenes, what goes into putting together the podcast, what channels we use. Since then, we shifted over to more video-based content as well. So we've updated a lot on our YouTube page. And I just wanted to share with you because we actually got some good traction on that particular episode, episode 50, where people kind of checked out to see what we were doing, how were we releasing. More and more people are very prolific now in putting out podcasts. So some of you might find points of interest. Hopefully you learn something. That's always what we strive to do, particularly with Tala Academy, Sequential Art, TASQ Art. Above all is the learning and sharing of knowledge, skills and resources. And then others might even along the way chime in if you notice anything or you have any feedback you'd like to share or suggestions, the more the merrier as well. So hopefully you'll find today's episode informative. It's not like a usual episode. It won't be it's somebody being interviewed and talking about process and such. But nonetheless, you'll probably find something of value. So if you're not a process junkie in terms of podcasting, I understand if this episode isn't for you. Others who might be just swinging by are just curious as to what episodes performed this season and how the podcast is going as a whole. You might be interested. So I'll keep this applicable for both audio and video audiences, but you might check out the YouTube channel at TASQ Art as well. We'll be actually sharing screen in just a moment and showing you the inside of the studio stats of what we have. So exactly sharing with you the statistics that we have for the podcast. So let's get straight into it then, folks, okay? So I'm just going to adjust here and share screen, and you'll be able to see, and we'll begin with our YouTube audience first of all. So what you're going to see now on screen in just a moment will be what our YouTube audience has been for the past 28 days. That's coming up to just about a month. So as you can see, we're actually riding a bit of a tide at the moment, a high tide, because we have 1.2 thousand more viewers than usual. So our viewership in the YouTube channel is up at 2.1 thousand. We also have a watch time of about 47.8 hours. That's roughly what it's been usually like. And we have seen an increase in subscribers. We had 7 subscribers in the past 28 days. That's an increase. And it is interesting. What I've observed doing the podcast is a lot of people may listen to a particular episode. They may come along for just that one speaker, but then they might not subscribe or come back for subsequent episodes. So that's something which is noteworthy for myself anyway. And I try to consider it as best I can when putting out the content. Ultimately, when sharing a podcast, particularly for the type of outfit that Creating Conversation is spinning out of TASQ Art, we're limited in availability and scheduling of our guests. I don't want this to be something that's a burden to anyone who's participating. Where possible, I try to share and promote individual projects as well for those who come to talk on the podcast. But really, the niche that we seem to be settling into is the sharing of expertise, the sharing of processes, and the sharing of individual journeys as well. I think that's very important because the way I initially envisioned the podcast were other creators could be established, could be nascent within the field, and everyone has their own struggles about what's working, what's not working, their own concerns, and it's always less of a burden if you can hear from somebody, particularly somebody you respect or someone who's prominent within industry, and they can share, hey, here's where I found initial struggles or continue to struggle within the field, or here's where I have certain concerns, or here is how I think new technologies or processes can be adapted. And in particular for this past season, and I'll go into some of the content as well that we covered in season two, we'll explore how I gave a little bit more of a focus on how creators like master classes and talks and special um, one-off conversations as well, where we explore the influence of AI, entrepreneurship, character design. So really, we delved as much as we could into the process side of thing and trying to give a wider audience as a whole a little snippet into what can be achieved with such an academy as Task Art. So at the moment, this is just for the past 28 days. So overall, we're looking at a 40% increase in terms of our audience. I'm actually just going to go into, and this is the YouTube studio. So when you have a YouTube channel, you log in, you basically press the upload button, and it will take you straight to the content creator page. But all your back-end statistics are here. So it's important to kind of check in to see what's working, what's not working. Sometimes it's not about the content, but it's about your posting because you can learn a lot about geographically who's watching. And of course, if it's in a different country, it could suggest a different time zone. So it's not that you haven't got good, solid content. Sometimes it's about you're not posting at the optimal time. So all it takes really is just maybe once a week or shortly after you upload a podcast or video, or maybe monthly, just to check in, see how you're doing, and make the adjustments. And what you will see, as I'll share with you in just a moment, our audience and viewership has been on the rise, particularly since we began the podcast. So you can see the steady increments. That said, there are also been dips, and we can explore that as well. And what I'm thinking some of those dips might have been caused, particularly as it's based on season. But I'm just going to look at the lifetime overall of the channel. So what we could see is 16,763 views have been made as a channel as a whole. Now, I want to focus specifically in terms of the podcast. So it's really important that I acknowledge that this counts for all the content that we've been putting up, our shorts, our trailers, etc. If we actually focus purely onto the podcast, I can scroll down here and you can see just a little bit here to the right of the screen we have the podcast statistics right here. And it's saying it's 8.1 thousand views with watch time total hours of 884.1. And you have separate analytics you can go into as well for that. So that's great to see because I'll be combining that with the audio podcast statistics. I made the decision very early on not to upload the video and audio files to the podcast all through the same channel. We use a platform called Hubhopper, which I'll get to in just a moment, for the audio podcast, and that distributes across multiple different podcast platforms. Some are automated. As soon as I upload through Hubhopper, they spread it out. Others, I have to manually connect it through Hubhopper and get it out there. Recently, we uploaded to Spreaker, which is a new platform that we've just done the last couple of months. I've been able to get that out there. But in terms of the lifetime of the channel, our top content, of course, be no surprise that the Frank Miller episode has been among the most watched at 1,797 views. That came from season one. And you will see how transformative that was to the channel. There was a real spike to the podcast in around September when that would have gone out. The second highest then actually comes from this season, in which we spoke with Jason O'Mara at the very start of this season of Creator in Conversation as well at 745. Now, almost you can see you're dropping more than 50% between the two episodes there immediately. It just goes to show the attention and the ability for people to actually come in and stay all the way through with an episode. You'll notice that the next four videos are all shorts, and shorts are good in just getting eyes on the channel, building up views, but there's not much in the way of conversion. So if somebody sees a short that they like, sometimes they might actually press like. Very rarely do we actually get a comment on it, but even more so, you don't see them moving on and migrating to a full video. That's actually very rare. There is a benefit to shorts, and we'll go into the possibility of earning on YouTube in just a moment. I'll share with you like what monetization platforms are available. But in terms of our shorts, the two highest come from season one, in which we had Anthony Marquez and Emma Kubert from the Joe Kubert School come in and just give a little demo and a talk, and that's been pretty well received. With a short, because they're so small, particularly the George Newborn one, which is our fifth most watched item on the channel as a whole, that's only 8 seconds long. So obviously, as soon as someone comes across it, scrolls across it, they're more or less seeing the full video. That counts as 100% viewed. That gets driven up. So that's shot all the way up. What I was really curious was last season, I just made a very short video. It was around January, February, noting the time when I first moved into what became the TASQ office slash studio. And it was literally just, I don't know, 13 seconds or something of me spinning around my phone. I didn't even add audio or music to it. I'm just giving a little spin, and that shot all the way up. It was posted quite late, so again, that was something I was conscientious of when posting, making sure sometimes shorts or videos at 6 p.m. or later in the evening, particularly on certain days of the week. And the analytics within the YouTube page will let you know what time is most popular with your viewer and your audience. As of now, for the past 2 seasons, we've been posting all our new content, both audio and video, to go out at 6 a.m. Dublin time. And that would mean it's about midnight over in the States and everywhere else. And I like the idea of here in Ireland, that'll probably be prime commute time. So if you're getting a bus or a train into work, you might start downloading and listening to it while you're on your journey in and get to commute. For others around the world, it's there waiting for you, as you wake up in the morning. However, I'm going to go back and review and maybe not change the day. I'm happy with the day, Tuesday, but I may review the posting time, like maybe do a different time instead of the 6 a.m. We'll see what that entails, if there's anything that moves the needle. And I might also stagger perhaps audio and video, although I do like it being released simultaneously together. But I do like the independence of the video and audio being on separate channels. So after Jason O'Mara, then, not counting shorts, our highest video again came from this semester. This semester, that's the teacher to me. From this season was the story of the Phantom, the 90th anniversary motion comic that myself and Joel Folder made. And it's great to see the response to that, because again, we just did that. We did contact King Features, both email and phone, and didn't get an actual, confirmation or acknowledgement formally from them that they would use it as part of the official 90th celebrations of the character. So we released it ultimately as a fan-made production, but the fans really took to it. It was quite well received. It was probably one of the most enjoyable projects I made. I did it in between semesters at the academy in January and had it ready to go out in February. So just while classes weren't in full swing, I had the time and really enjoyed it. And like, no one's getting paid out of it. No, there wasn't anything like great reward. It's just a real passion project, but it went very well and totally enjoyed it. Ironically, a Phantom fan YouTube page actually somehow got hold of the whole video and posted it onto their channel. So this is why it may seem strange, but sometimes you have to search your content just to see what comes up, where it is in the search engine optimization, etc. But sometimes you might find your material being reused. Thankfully, I reached out to the channel. I was able to make contact with them. I was just saying, could they please remove it? I'm happy for them to share it, but to have it on their channel, because that climbed up to a couple of more hundred. It could have even been about 600 or something. But I'm like, that's views. We won't get paid for anything. The least I would have liked would potential views to build the audience for the podcast. Now, if you enjoyed the motion comic, please do let us know if you would like to see more of that on the platform, on the podcast. We did release an audio drama slash motion comic of the origins of Doctor Doom for Free Comic Book Day this year. Last year we did a free kind of booklet done like a newspaper fold out for all the comic strips we do, Flash Gordon, The Phantom, Popeye. But for this year we decided just to do a quick motion comic, obviously with Doomsday coming up in December. And that was a lot of fun as well. And thanks to Matt Sheedy of Media5, who provided the audio and voice acting for those videos. And then you can see for the rest of the top 10 in terms of the video content that we have on YouTube, you can see that the shorts, we have the Susan Eisenberg discussing how she developed her Wonder Woman voice, Steve Ditko's essays on the development of Spider-Man, which are shared by his nephew, Mark Ditko. And then, of course, an episode from this season was Jason O'Mara discussing his portrayal of Lieutenant Thomas Meehan in Band of Brothers. So we can see here out of our top 10, we see that there's one, two, three, four, five, six videos from this season. So what's interesting is the newer content is rising to the top, which is great. Then there's some steadfast video. Of course, Frank Miller is probably going to be always remaining at the top for the channel, for the podcast. And hopefully, I'd say the Phantom 90th anniversary and the Jason O'Mara video, they'll probably stay towards the top as well. It's interesting to see the Susan Eisenberg and George Newborn shorts make it to the top as well, because those of you who are listening to the 50th episode of Creating Conversation, where basically I did an episode like this, reviewing the podcast and the year that went into it. What was really curious was the episode where I interviewed Justice League. So what happened was, and those you go back and listen to the episode will hit, that's episode 70. I was doing a panel at Dublin Comic Con. Andrea Romano was there before her masterclass here at TASQ Art, joined by Susan, Maria, and George. And ultimately, it was a great conversation, good engagement and Q&A with the audience. And I record panels off my phone. I gave it to a friend of mine in the audience. The ambient noise, the direction of the microphone, I was told it'd be a total write-off. This season of Creating Conversation, I myself have just done all the editing, exported all the media files, and I'll go through my software and everything with you in just a moment. But in the previous season, we had Matt Sheedy from Media Vibe and Stefano Missouri from Podcast Dublin. And a huge shout out to Stefano and Podcast Dublin, because Hubhopper is courtesy of Podcast Dublin. So if you are looking to get into podcasting, do reach out to Podcast Dublin, do reach out to Stefano, because he has that distribution with Hubhopper down. So thanks to Stefano, I just need to get my audio file ready each week or each month if I'm bulking up, and I can just release and pre-program the release then for each new episode. So because I've been doing more and more editing, it was actually because of that we did more video content. And if you go back and look at the history of the podcast, particularly on YouTube, you'll notice the increase in visuals and graphics. And as a result, I was more confident in my editing ability. So I was able to go in and boost and clean the Justice League episode. And what that entailed was breaking it down into 10-minute short videos and really just scrubbing and boosting the audio as best I can. It is still very uneven, but it's much more manageable to listen to. But the real success of that journey was breaking those 10-minute segments then, before I piece them back together to a full episode, break them into, let's say, 1 or 2 minute videos where we had the actors, Andrea, discussing how they developed the role or how Andrea directed them. And that went very, very well. In terms of social media, we, of course, have Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. TikTok, sometimes we get views. It's not a platform that really seems to be gelling with us as of yet, but it's sometimes things will spike on it, and short videos do quite well, of course, on TikTok. But these short videos made the Just League episode, even if you don't listen to the episode or it's too much for you, those shorts have helped make a huge reach to a wider audience. So I'm glad we're able to salvage that and get it in time for episode 70 as well, because it's important to note the milestones as well. So that was just in terms of the Justice League, that episode. I was really happy that I was able to put that together as best I can. Is it uneven in terms of quality? Yes, but it's still manageable enough to get it in front of an audience as well. And if anything else, the shorts are showing how beneficial it was to reach people. And there's some really interesting insights. Like again, George sharing that he based his portrayal of Superman on his older brother. That was really interesting as well. And it seemed to really have taken a lot of people by surprise. And as you can see here, particularly that video, the average view duration is up by 224.8%. So that just tells you everything that you need to know. Ultimately, in terms of the podcast on YouTube, you're looking at 8.1 thousand views, as I said, but overall hours, 884.1 hours. So again, we're a very small channel. We only have 142 subscribers in total. So anything that we have there, we do really appreciate that. I just wanted to have a quick look then in terms of our audience then. So who has actually been checking us out on YouTube, where they're coming from, and just, who are you guys out there in cyberspace who've been checking in? So, in terms of our monthly audience in total, we're looking at about 570 people tuning in, which is great. I know in the grand scheme of things, that might be very small comparable to other YouTube channels, but listen, this is something that I've been putting together. It's now officially a one-person operation. The fact that we have 570 people, that's pretty great. And 142 subscribers. We're a good spike in recent months. That's because we've been increasing the output as much as possible. So I've been doing more posts, more shorts, and trying to get the information out there. The reason I can afford to put more out is because we're now out of semester, which means I'm not delivering classes because obviously Tala Academy Sequential Art Task Art is on its first academy dedicated towards comic book creation and the wider sequential arts and adjacent fields. When you put together a class, it involves putting together the material, um, writing everything up, testing the equipment to make sure the share screen works, the slides are correct, the links that you're providing with the students are correct. Then it's the actual delivery of the class, and then of course there's any follow-up like grading, etc., that must be done. So it's not just, let's say you have a 90-minute class, it's more than 90 minutes when you look at the whole prep. So that can take a good part of your working day. What I try to do and endeavor to do here at TASQ, because you also have the publishing arm of Light and Straight Comics, and we have the monthly digital comic task force, which comes out featuring, Flash Gordon, Popeye the Phantom. I try to divide up my working week into specific days where possible, where I can say, this is the day that'll be used towards publishing, this is the day towards shipping, this is the day for editing the podcast, this is the day for updating social media, and so on and so forth. Obviously, the nature of the beast will not permit you to uh, have just entire dedicated days to do like one particular job or task, but where possible, I try to make like one day dominated by one particular task, as it were, because there are other jobs that have to be spread throughout the week that you just have to keep doing, like checking in with the online store, checking in with the emails, etc., etc. I couldn't go a whole week and only leave it to like Friday to answer emails or something like that. So everything is proportionate to the time where possible. But during the summertime, unless we have special one-off classes or courses, pretty much the daytime now is more free to focus on other endeavors like preparing for the next semester, preparing the podcast, reaching out to people to conduct interviews with. At this point of recording, we do have guests lined up for next season, and that's the reason why this season was a shorter season. So last year, I wanted to go for 52 episodes. The reason for that is because I want to prove that I could do weekly uninterrupted. So every Tuesday, 6 a.m., there was a new episode. We met that, not a problem. Boom, 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 boom. Now, I had the added benefit because the podcast serves as the repository for all my other interviews and talks. So panels that I've done, other podcasts might have featured on. So I had a backlog of material that I could use to bridge in between episodes. But even though we went for 52 episodes and I could have afforded to go a few weeks without posting anything, I didn't want to lose the traction. So you'll notice that if you go through our YouTube and podcast feed, every Tuesday there's been a post. Sometimes on other days, like the Free Comic Book Day this year, that was a Saturday, we put out the Doctor Doom origin story. So that went out on a Saturday, the first Saturday of May. But then also we did bonus episodes like the Elliot Magan episode last season, which we re-released the video this season. That went down the third Monday of May to coincide with Miracle Monday, the setting of the novel. So where possible, we might do bonus episodes. And then after season one, when we did our 52nd episode, I released a series of mini podcasts from a collection of talks delivered at Dublin Comic Con. So the reason I want to go for 20 this season was I really wanted to make it clear to the audience that if you're tuning in, because I'm an avid podcast listener myself, and I like to know like if I'm waking up on a Monday to listen to this podcast, the episode is waiting for me. If enough advance notice is given that there won't be an episode that Monday, that's okay, you know. I'll plan accordingly or whatever. 20 episodes affords me the opportunity now to record episodes in bulk. So I won't have the backlog as I would have had in the previous season. And once the next semester picks up then with classes, because as well as TASQ, I'm an associate lecturer elsewhere. I need to make sure that I have everything pre-recorded and ready to go out. That's what come at the end of each episode where I guess I would ask them, hey, anything you want to promote? But typically I try to keep the conversation geared towards process, you know, and origins and just generally their approach and to comics. So I'd really try and get that into the conversation because that makes it evergreen. So that an episode that's recorded 1 month will be, you know, you can listen to it 2 years, 20 years from now, and it will still hold relevancy. So that's kind of my approach and direction with the podcast as much as possible. This season, when Jason Flood joined us for creating conversation, talk about upcoming films, etc., in the pop culture world, that was me dipping the toe into maybe something about doing more review orientated stuff. But I decided that's not the approach for this particular podcast. And this episode is going to go out as episode 73. I'm not going to count it as a bonus episode. I was, but then I decided it's relevant. Plus, I want to take this episode towards the end to thank all of our guests from this season as well, which I'll do. Because I didn't want to tack it on at the end of the Howard Mackey episode. So I'm going to thank everyone into this one. So technically this season jumped up to 21, technically 22 if you count the Free Comic Book Day episode, and if you count the bonus episodes re-releases, you can always get up to 25, but I'm happy to call it at 20. What's the future then for the podcast? Well, the next season I'll probably go for another 20. Out of that 20, I'll probably have the first 4 or 5 episodes lined up. I haven't recorded anything because I've been reaching out to the guests. And again, typically when doing the podcast, the approach is being approach someone through whatever channel is available, typically email addresses or contact elements on websites or through the representatives, and share with them what I hope to do with the podcast, see if they're interested in participating, and be as flexible as possible to their schedule. So far, I've been fortunate in that no one has, apart from one person, provided an outright no when asked. The one person who said no, it was purely because their position in the company was in an editorial capacity. They couldn't afford time, but we can always reconnect. And anyone else, typically it's just they don't respond. They may not have received the email. Sometimes it goes to spam. Or maybe it's a time difference. They may reach the email at an awkward time, forget that they got it. But in next season, you will see people who I reached out a previous year and didn't hear back, but then a year later I reach out and then they reconnect. So sometimes it's just about reconnecting. But what I don't do is just bombard, bombard, bombard. That's something I would not advise. But in particular, for this, um, for our guests, and people may look back and it is a fair comment as well in terms of diversity of guests within the season. Unfortunately, again, I have no ability to ensure who's available and who responds when invited to the podcast. So sometimes there may be in some seasons a gender imbalance or such, Or sometimes you might have more from writers than artists, for example, in terms of the discipline. Ultimately, I try my best to strike a balance in everything that I do. But unfortunately, the reality is you have to consider who gets back, what the schedule is like for myself and themselves, and what we can make work. So where I can, I try to reach out to many, many people. Sometimes people I reached out to for this season have returned and said, well, not now, but late in the year. So you'll be hearing from them in the second season. So you might notice shifts along the way. But in terms of programming, although I'm breaking it into seasons from a repository and evergreen point of view, anyone who's listening, you won't particularly notice. But in terms of just booking guests, as it were, it's really at the discretion of the people I reach out to, and I try and keep it in line as much as possible to what the goal and ethos of the podcast is. Excuse me. So with regards to the what the goal of the podcast is, as I've mentioned before in a couple of episodes, Creating Conversation began its existence as a series of live talks delivered here at the Academy. We were not able to capture the attention of the general public in any significant numbers. So, because I had recorded previous panels at Dublin Comic Con and some other masterclasses, I decided there was enough content to record and put out a podcast. When the podcast began, I decided to go for 52 episodes. We succeeded in that. And now the identity of the podcast is more solidified. Ultimately, the goal is to peel back and look at what goes into making a comic book, the different roles associated with them, how those roles have evolved from previous eras in comics to the modern day, some of the disruptive and new innovative technologies that have been released, like how the internet has provided a new dimension to how we engage with the medium, to what AI could hold in the future as well, in particular for how one might use it as a marketing tool and the concerns around people using AI in substitute of artwork and their own original creation. So the podcast is essentially looking at comic book creation, but then we have the adjacent fields because sequential art is defined by Scott McCloud as images in deliberate sequence juxtaposed to convey information, often used in the comic book medium as a narrative. So when you take that definition, animation, film, games are a form of sequential art as well. In previous episodes, and many to listen back on, some of our guests we've spoken about the multidisciplinary or transferable skills. At this point of recording, the Howard Mackey episode hasn't gone out yet, where he talks about leaping from editor to writer, but the PJ Holden episode has gone out and he really hammers home the point on transferable skills. So as a result, as an educator, as someone who works in the field, I think it's important that we look and across and say, well, let's check in with animation and games every so often as well and see if the crossover happens, because it's important to recognize that if your whole passion is to break into comics and just do pure comics, that's one approach to the endeavor. But along the way, to establish yourself and build up to those opportunities, you might find yourself working in other adjacent fields as well. So we don't stay away from that. And so whenever I put out an episode where we might be talking about something that's more in the adjacent field than pure comics, I do feel it brings value to the listeners in a significant way. I do really believe it helps to get that point across and give you more food for thought. And there's a saying from Henry Ford that if he had asked people what they'd wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that's an important point I share with all my students when it comes towards business and innovation, which is it's important not to just look within solely your individual field all the time and decide what am I going to do, but to also look outside of other industries, other fields, other disciplines, see what works and what you might be able to take to use and elevate for your own art form as well. That's something I would recommend. So back to some of the statistics here then as well. What's really, really interesting is that in terms of our new viewers, we have 88.6%. So the majority of our viewers on YouTube are people who come new to the channel and then don't stay. Then casual viewers are 7.7%. So people who might come back in 5 months in the past. But our regular viewers, which are people who, have watched the channel in 6 or more months over the past year, it's only 3.7%. So ultimately, what this is saying to me is the majority of people are tuning in for something specific or come across the channel and then disappear. The very minority of people who are actually coming back on a weekly or regular basis. So at the end of each episode, what I try and say is, if you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe. I'll put this out to you guys as well that, if you would like me to continue with this channel to have more opportunities for the audience and members to participate in to hold some really engaging conversations. The only way I can really do that is if the channel grows because the time that goes into it and other elements are, that is a resource I have to consider very carefully. Last year, if you go back to episode 50, I mentioned about because we were using the assistance of MediaFibe and other elements, there was a cost associated with the podcast. This year, because I'm doing everything myself, that cost diminished. So the podcast isn't earning anything. And the goal isn't really to make money off. It's more to act as a repository for the work that we do at the academy and to reach potential new members and students, basically, to really act as a record of information from leading industry experts in the field. But this year, it hasn't made anything, but it hasn't cost me anything. The software that I use to put the podcast together, there's two. One is Canva, which I use to design the logos and the caption boxes that you see on the videos, and then for the actual slicing together of the video and exporting of the audio file is MP3. That's used in an open source software called Shotcut, Shotcut. So Canva and Shotcut are the two softwares we use. Shotcut doesn't cost anything, it's open source. Canva does come with a subscription, which I pay monthly for the premium. But I would also use Canva for other elements. So if I wasn't, it's not solely for the podcast. So therefore, if I stopped using Canva, I'd probably still be able to get the podcast out anyway. So I'm not too concerned in that regard and putting it out. So ultimately, there's no drain. So that's great. The fact that we went from basically losing money on the podcast last year to now not losing anything but not gaining anything. So I suppose break even if you want, or net zero. But our audience is increasing as well. So as you can see here, and if I go back up to the table here, you can see through our lifetime of the audience here, from, let's say, this is gone from May 2024 to June 2026. It's pretty much flatline, and then we can see here in January. So from this particular point, you can see when we begin the podcast, and you can see the spikes here. This is just in around when the Miller episode was. There was a huge drop off. We come to this drop off in a moment, and then we can see it's a steady rise, bit of a dip, but we're still here in June and coming up. So this is our lowest point more or less in the podcast, but we haven't really dipped so much below that. So we're kind of treading water and staying okay. So we're seeing a marked increase and steady growth along the way, which is nice. In terms of our audience, so as I was saying, 75.5%, so only 80% of people are not subscribed. And then from the people who are checking in, and then just a quarter, 24.5, so about 25%. So it's 25% and then 80%. If you're watching this, please consider subscribing so we can help grow. In terms of our audience, what they're watching is primarily on the mobile phone, then followed by computer. Some are watching on smart TVs and tablets as well. The phone information is important, as we see with the audio, because if you're listening on the phone, chances are you have earbuds in. So that's something I'm always conscientious of when recording the audio. And the audio quality with the podcast is something which I figured out how to fade in and out music, and I know how to boost sound, but the microphone is really important. The microphone I'm using this season is different from season one. We used the Shure microphone, SHURE. That was on loan from Podcast Dublin. They came across an unused Blue Yeti microphone, which is what I'm using now. But the way it picks up the pitch and all, it's not as smooth. So Next season, I probably will try my best to invest in a new microphone. That would mean an expenditure solely for the purpose of the podcast. So that could lead to next year being a loss on the podcast as well. However, if it leads to an increase in audience and any conversion from people who listen becoming members or students, that could justify that expense for the most part. Curiously, as of this recording, anyone who's come across the podcast has not signed up for any courses or found out about us. The new students and members that we've had find out about the academy first, then find out about the podcast. So that's not exactly what I would prefer. I prefer that the other way around. But having this repository of conversations, I do think it is important to really, because the type of podcast that we offer, there's no there's nothing politic behind it. There's nothing that's going to be like great controversy behind it. It really is just talking about craft and stories and the love of it, really, like this medium. And I haven't edited, cut out, or shied away from any conversation. Always, when I have a guest on, I say if there's anything you don't want to talk about or such, I'm happy to glance over. But that has never, ever been an issue in the history and lifespan of this podcast as of recording, where someone has asked me to go back and cut something out or change anything. The only edits we've ever really had to make is if somebody is, again, PJ Holden episode, you might see a slight jump in it. That is because the gas man came to check the meter in his in his house. So there's just a little cut edit there. And the rest of the editing is just to trying to improve the audio and visual quality onto it. That's all. Everything else is pretty much as you get it. In season one, I recorded intros and outros. I dismissed that in this season and just do a little snippet of intro music, and that's pretty much it. Um, yeah, I think that's been working out well. I make a point of introducing the guest at the start then, but I figure with the thumbnails and text, like essentially I keep the introduction brief because if you're listening to the episode, you've already seen the title where the guest is in it and you've probably read the bio. And if you're listening to the podcast, you're probably listening to it for that person. So there's no point wasting the time on the intro is where my opinion on that has come in. And then for the outro, then I just usually have a very simple graphic saying to like and subscribe. And then for the audio, I just drop in a clip of me saying on the exit music, like and subscribe. So it's more efficient that way. In terms of the age and gender profile for the podcast, we can see that the majority of our audience, of our listeners, are male at 76.3%. And then for the average age of listeners is 25 to 34 years, followed by the 35 to 44 years, followed by the 18 to 24, and then it jumps back up to 45 to 54. Oh, sorry, no, it jumps up to 55 to 64, then 45 to 54. It is curious, the prime age demographic would be the one that I fall into myself. So that's obviously where me as host leaning into it, I suppose. And then in terms of geography, this is really interesting just to see where in the world people are listening. Ireland, of course, coming in at top for the lifespan, followed by the United States. But then, interestingly, it's Malaysia that comes in third, then the United Kingdom, and it begins to dip from there. But the fact that we're going from Ireland to the United States where the UK would be closer, that's been really, really curious as well. And if we click on this, you can also see a full breakdown. If I was to go into the United States, I can then see which cities people are listening to. So California is the most popular area of people who are listening to the podcast, followed by New York, then Texas, then Pennsylvania, and then Ohio, followed then by Florida, Massachusetts, Washington, and Illinois. So it's interesting that I wouldn't have pegged California as being one of the most popular areas in the United States listening, but then I probably never really gave it much consideration onto it. But that's great to see that I have that information available to listen to as well. And again, if you're listening to this episode or watching it on YouTube, don't be afraid to leave a comment. Let us know how you're finding it, and do reach out. Info at tasquart, TASQART.com is where we are. So you can be able to reach out, and we'd be happy to just connect with people around the globe. Okay, so let's get back into some of the stats here that we will look at as well. What I think would be a good one to look at just before we move into the audio audience then would be where are we in terms of the possibility of earning then onto the channel. So what does that involve when it comes towards um, earning? So with YouTube, there are two pathways to earn. One is to have membership, and membership is where people can, tip you, become a member, etc. And the other one is to access ad revenue as well. So every time an ad plays, and if you reach significant numbers, that will give you, some earnings. It's not like major money, particularly at the start, but at least it'd be something for the work that you put into it. So the closest that we come to in terms of earning would be towards the membership platform. And for the eligibility of that, you are required to have at least 500 subscribers. We have 142. So we just require under 400 subscribers then. You have to have at least three videos uploaded in the last 90 days, which we would easily meet that criteria because of the podcast is monthly. So you're looking at a minimum of four videos in 90. So if it's 90 days, it would be 30, 60, 90. So we would have 12 videos then, basically. And then you have to have a number of one of the following. You have to have 568 valid watch hours for public shorts. Sorry, you have to have 3 million, apologies, 3 million valid hours of shorts or 3,000 public videos. So that's 3,000 hours of public videos. We have 739 and we only have 568 when it comes towards shorts. So we're way off in that criteria. The 500 subscribers is quite manageable. So hopefully within, this isn't a full year since season one, because we're in June, so it's only a year and a half since it began. But hopefully in another 6 months, if we can get this up to about 200, that would mean hopefully going into the tail end of year three, we might reach that 500. So I think by the end of year three, 500 is a manageable number to get to. And then the increase in subscribers, like if you follow someone and hit the subscribe button and the notification, you'd be notified each time there's a new episode. That would hopefully, logic would dictate, drive up the viewership then for you. In terms of so that's the watch hours then. So the watch hours is that's the one to get people to actually watch your content and to watch it all the way through. That's the tricky one. For the ad revenue, that's much tougher. It's basically doubling everything. You need to get 1,000 subscribers and you need to have 4,000 hours of public watched videos and you need 10 million hours of viewed shorts as well. So that's going to be a tough one. So if you want to get that ad revenue, that's the toughest. So that's pretty much a look into the YouTube side of things. Things that I've learned on YouTube in this past year of doing video. So we shifted from being audio only to doing video. First of all, we re-released videos of other interviews to test it. So the season one finale was with John Jackson Miller. I re-released that. I used a virtual kind of background of shooting stars. That glitched when it first released, so I had to take the video down. That's always a pain because when you delete a video, it does affect the algorithm and stuff. But I re-released the re-release and fixed it. But then the background, if you go back and watch it, it's not as smooth as I would hope, even though I had tested it already, something to do with the export and import onto it. I did something similar with Dave Gibbons re-release. We re-released the video onto it. And then I kind of was juicing the video screen size, the speaker, and I realized it was a lot of effort for very little reward, and aesthetically it was probably more distracting. So then going forward, what we ended up doing was keeping the graphics very, very simple. So there's a simple header and footer is what we settled on now. We have the like and subscribe and the social media handle. Everything is at TASQ. So TASQAOT, like behind me. Everything's just the one handle across all our platforms. Very easy to find us. But the only major change we've had on video has been with the Jason O'Mara episode. We recorded that on site at Black Box. So where I'm talking to you guys typically is in the studio, and across the way, in the cafe, the Edge Cafe, there is a designated room, Black Box, where we host some of our other talks and workshops. It sits up to 30 people. And with Jason O'Mara, we used a camera, a HD camera, to record the episode, borrowed from Podcast Dublin again, Stefano Missouri, and we just had lav mics attached to us. And pretty much we just spoke with the cameras running. Then, I just cut the whole setup of the camera and testing of the mic. I cut that bit and then just added the introduction. That was just a continuous conversation. Went very well, very smooth. So I'd love to do something like that again. We did do something similar this season where we had Michael Carroll return in studio, and I just used the laptop and the Blue Yeti microphone to speak with him. And for the most part, that was a fun experience, and we did the same for Jason Flood. But the only downside with recording in the actual studio itself without the HD camera is that the camera I'm using on this laptop is not the world's best camera. I had a Lenovo laptop before, the one I'm using here, which is a HP laptop I bought during the second lockdown, because the other laptop I honestly, if it wasn't for lockdown, I hadn't anticipated ever using again. So what I do when I have someone in is like elevate the laptop, put the microphone between us, but the quality isn't as sharp as I would like it to be, and that's why I have the virtual background here. Because we did a whole episode showing off the studio space. You might think, why don't I have more of that in camera? Well, the background, the visuals, the camera itself doesn't pick up the visuals as sharply as I want. So when you have the virtual background, it does make it a little bit sharper, but I know my head kind of blurs and disappears when I'm bobbing around. And unfortunately, the angle at which I'm at, we have a high skylight and a backlight as well, which is great for drawing because you need as much natural light as possible. But the light source is always behind me, so I know that can be a little bit distracting. But for the most part, I try to, when now setting upon the formula of talking to someone on Zoom, I split the screen in two, have the head and foot. I kind of crop myself as much to the left, because ultimately a good podcast is when I'm not talking as much and it's more the guest. And the statistics reveal that to me as well. That said, it is interesting. Some of the solo episodes like this one, when I put out, that they do seem to bounce higher initially upon release. When it's just me, like the TASQ tour when I was doing in season one, just talking about my approach to storytelling in the entrepreneurship field, the 50th anniversary episode, they did quite well. So that's interesting to know. But that might suggest something that we haven't done on the channel is any form of live stream. So maybe that's the next big thing to explore. Maybe doing something live stream. I don't know about doing interviewing guests on live stream just yet. The reason for that is because at present, when you interview someone for the podcast, it's already tricky enough in case there's a pause or if there's a loss of signal. But at least I can fix all that in the edit room. Thankfully, it hasn't actually happened this season. I think there was one or two moments buffer, but we never dropped out or lost the signal. But if I was doing a live stream with someone and that happened, that would probably be a little bit trickier. How I record everything is via Zoom, and then I just export the video file, do the edits, add the graphics in Canva, export that then into Shotcut, and then export the audio, upload the audio to Hubhopper, which I'll show you in just a moment, and then upload video and time on YouTube. And then when it goes up to YouTube, I have a thumbnail that you make, and that's something I've took extra attention to this semester. Is I have a kind of formulaic thumbnail for all the episodes, but I changed the images to each relevant guest. But previously we just had a kind of a blue box thumbnail, which you still use for the audio podcast, but for YouTube, it has its own designated thumbnails now as well. And that makes it a little bit more attractive then for people when they're scrolling, they see it to click on it. So the thumbnail is important for catching the attention of your audience on YouTube. That's something that I would recommend for anyone who's creating videos on YouTube to consider. But don't go nuts with it. I think it's important that you don't. Sometimes people go all the way to make this very, exaggerated thumbnail to grab as much attention as possible. But if you do that, then what's going to happen is somebody will be disappointed when they click on your video thinking they're going to see something and it's not there. It's almost like false advertising, in my opinion. So I try and draw from the thumbnail something from the actual interview itself that might capture their attention, and have alongside that clip a book or project that the guest has worked on to really grab their attention. So let's look then into the Hubhopper platform then and what that entails. So first of all, I'm going to share with you all about ultimately, we had about 40 different countries listening in to the podcast, which is great. When I did this, would have been happy if people that's outside of Dublin listened in to us as well. But here's everything, the analytics on Hubhopper. And this is our all-time statistics from when we began. So that's from the 20th of January 2025 to this recording, which is June 27th. So this is coming out and sharing this with you before the final episode with Howard Mackey. So that hasn't gone out yet. So all these statistics will be different again. But ultimately, it's very similar to the YouTube audience. Ireland is number one, followed by the United States, then the United Kingdom. So again, it's interesting, it's that little bit of a jump. What is curious with the audio audience, and I thought this was curious because it's audio, not visual, is Japan is then our fourth highest. And I sometimes talk about this with some of the guests, but I'm curious as to if it's audio only, how my accent is translating across the people who might be listening. So I'm not too surprised because we actually have received in the publishing arm of the company, Light and Strike Comics, we have received orders of books to Japan. So I know people are aware of the work that we're doing, so maybe that's some synergy going on. Then it goes into Austria, China, Hong Kong, then Canada, and it's surprising to see Canada further down in comparison to the United States and UK. Then we get more into the EU side of things, Germany and Finland, and then it comes a mixture. But when we get down, so you're looking at less than 1% for all the other countries there. But when you look at it all, you're looking about around 40 different countries in total in terms of people tuning in, which is great. Now, because this is separate to the YouTube channel, it gives me a separate form of statistics. So there could be overlap. And there is a video upload element to Hubhopper, but again, I like the redundancy in case something happened to Hubhopper. Let's say I would have access to all the episodes and such on YouTube, or vice versa, and then everything's backed up on a cloud as well. So there's various different ways to access it. But in terms of the overall podcast performance, we have 3,432. If you take that to the 8,000 that we have, we're just under 12,000. So over 11,000, between 11 to 12,000 people in total since we began the podcast in January 2025 have listened in. And this is showing you a real snapshot of where we are with the podcast. Because you can see, if I just follow along here, that since we began in January, we've been on the way up and up and up and up and up, and there's an increase then. It was starting to curve a little bit here when we got to around August. Now, there was a good spike here, and then we get to September. And that was our highest for a time, and then started to level, bit of a dip, then leveled. And this period of time here, in September, just into November, what happened was we had the three-part mini-series about Steve Ditko, Beyond the Myth, which I'll talk more about in a moment as we have a documentary of that coming out soon. And then we also had the Frank Miller Masterclass recording. So that accounted for the spike. What's curious then is once we get to November into December, we actually dipped. We dipped significantly until spring. So we went all the way from our highest highs at that point in time to dipping. It still never dropped to the lowest that we were. Well, we've kept well above that. It's more volatile with the video audience. But what we see here is our highest was 290 in September. And then we maintained at 275 in October, November, but then we dipped to 190, rose to 203 in January, and then dipped to 197 in February. What I think the precipitating factor might be there is that you're looking at a winter break then, a holiday season, and people's schedules have changed. sometimes you might think people would be listening more as they travel, but routines and stuff have changed. But what we'd see then is when we started getting to March, there was a big uptake, and then our highest ever has been 294 in April. We dipped in May, but again, we haven't dipped to our lowest point, only 218, but now we're at 224, so we're on the rise again. And in comparison to where we were in June of last year, that's 180 to 224. So we're definitely rising up. And I did see a bit of a dip, but I'm also putting that down to the summer season kicking in as well. But the autumn period of September, October, back to school time, being an academy, that seems very much into the mix. Speaking about the release times, I was saying I was considering mixing things up, but overall, in terms of the lifespan of the podcast, the 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. period, this is an Irish time, has remained our most predominant time. So that's where the majority at 46.5. The next one after that would be during the 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then after that's 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. The 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. period would be the lowest then onto it. Now I can change this statistics to, let's just look at the last 30 days and see how things performing. And then we can see there's a shift to 12 to 5 p.m. So that's why I got to kind of look at the micro and the macro when it comes down to these elements as well. And then the rest you can see, this is how everything gets uploaded. You can see the schedule and the thumbnails go up, and you can see the individual episodes and how they perform. Typically, if I get 30 people listening on the audio podcast and you get another 30 on YouTube, that gets you 60. So I would say an average audience for one episode when it's brand new, combined with YouTube and Hubhopper, would be about 60. And then that might increase up the higher over the month. And so when you account for the month, then it can climb up to maybe about 100. But the audio audience is significantly lower than the video audience. And we've only had one video, and you can guess it, it's the Frank Miller video that broke over 300. But what I am noticing with the audio audience is that less people are going back to listen to previous episodes. With the YouTube, I'm seeing a steady growth into people going back to other episodes. If they checked one out, they might go back. But the older audio episodes have also broken 100 more. So what my plan is for the summer is, while we're in between episodes, is to introduce a new feature, which I'll share in the podcast, which would be a Throwback Thursday element and re-releasing old episodes. And because we have a lot of episodes where we have the video, but we never released the video. So I'm going to go back and release those videos to help maintain the traction that we have with our audience. I'm also going to try and maintain the posting schedule, try and have something out every Tuesday on audio and video while we're in between the seasons. One will be quite easy, but just be the trailer for season 3. But the other would be an exciting project. It's the Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth documentary. So what happened was, last year I produced a 3-part miniseries, Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth, which was featuring Dr. Zach Cruzy, Jack C. Harris, and Mark Zen Ditko. So we had an academic studying the work of Ditko, an editor and friend and colleague of Steve Ditko, and a family member of Steve Ditko, and we pulled the veil back on a couple of these myths. And I was wondering if people might think I'm trying to go back to the well a second time, but what I'm going to do now is to actually edit all those interviews, the video, together into a single, about 75-minute, give or take, documentary. And the reason for it is because if I cut myself out of that video, and I might make some new interstitials, like new linkings with a new host in between some of the key points, I think some of the information will come across sharper and clearer for our audiences as well. So I think even though it's not going to have new material per se, it's going to have, I think it will present the information sharper. So that will be coming out over the summer period as well. So you have that to look forward to. So there'll be still stuff happening even as we take this break. And then at this point in time, what I would really like to do is to thank all of our guests from this particular season. It was a great opportunity for me. We really started strong. Our first episode this season was the story of the Phantom 90th anniversary, followed by the great Jason O'Mara conversation. And then after that, then great conversation with Thomas Healy from Todd McFarlane Productions. And it was wonderful to really hear from the editorial side as well. And then we had Erica Schultz, who did an amazing interview, and also the students at TASQ participated in that. And she provided great insight, like really cut through a lot of, sometimes vagueness that happens at panels, and she really gave us some really valuable insight into how the industry works. And then we also had Mark Russell as well, who did a wonderful job in just sharing about his experience, like the day-to-day of professional writing comic books. We then heard directly from the students of TASK who read their short stories, which will be collected in print this summer in Task Tales Volume 2. Again, they were taught by Samantha Brooks. I was able to reconnect then with Ian Churchill, which is a great conversation. He was one of the first professional panels that I ever did. And then, of course, Gary Erskine, we took a segment from a masterclass he did in character design, and it was great to be able to share that masterclass with the audience as well, for you guys to just have a little peek of like what we can achieve here at the Academy. Then we had Sugata, who did a great conversation on AI as well, and how it can be used as a tool to help you achieve your marketing goals as an artist, not to be used to replace the artist in the creative enterprise. Will Sliney was great conversation, wonderful to have him on the record, and Michael Carroll returned. And I'm always careful with return guests as well, because as I was saying, in my mind, I think, well, if I make it to 100 episodes, that would be significant. But I want to make sure then if you do 100, you don't have too many repeat guests. But Michael had very kindly offered to return to the podcast before I expressed it. And he had some great projects to come out and promote. So it was wonderful to have him actually in studio to talk. We then had a bonus episode of The Origin of Doctor Doom for Free Comic Book Day. And then I did another solo episode in which I took the tour of Task and showed off some of our collection here and original artwork as well. Michael Donnelly joined us, and this is part of the adjacent and ancillary fields as well, because Michael's there to talk about like what goes into website design, online portfolio. This is important information to consider, and Fair Garcia was the great complement then to that in speaking about the entrepreneurship side of comics, and how if you want to make a livelihood out of it, you want to make sure that you consider the wider picture. Hal Loudon then came in, and he did a great job as well in just talking about what it's like being an independent creator, but also Kickstarter and crowdfunding side of things. Jason Flood, God bless you, Jason. He came in, he was meant to talk films and stuff with me for 20 minutes. Rent off the ranch, as it were, when trying to stay on topic. Actually got us our first explicit notification on Apple Podcast. We went through so many episodes before everyone's on the best behavior, but you just can't contain Jason Flood, as it were. Joel Foldo is great to have on as well, because again, this podcast, it's not about just having just like the biggest names in the industry as well, but it's also important that we shine a spotlight on rising creators. And Joel was a wonderful a teacher here at the Academy, and hopefully we'll have him around for many, many more semesters. I had another quick bonus episode as I went through the archives and found an old TV interview of myself and Declan Shelby with the late, great Keelan Shanley. And then we had the Restore Justice League, the Lost Tape reunion as well. Then we had a show note because for some reason Hubhopper had some weird glitch where it released the PJ Holden episode a few days early. I had to delete, reset it. It's all okay now. But I had that quick show note followed by a great conversation with PJ Holden. And then we close out the season with Howard Mackey, which was a fantastic conversation. It was so funny because when I was talking to Howard, like you hear it in the conversation, he's like, I just was speaking with John Byrne before I took this Zoom call. So such a small world. But I've been enjoying the podcast anyway very much. I just hope that you, the listener, have found value into it. I might do another video at some stage where I'll show like the actual process of putting together the episode. But in this, I just wanted to share with you like the back end, how we do, and here's the statistics and stuff. there's there's nothing for me to hide behind a curtain here for you guys. Like, and there's nothing really of any commercial sensitive nature in sharing it with you. It is curious. It's similar sized podcasts and stuff I've seen reach a wider audience and stuff, but I'm always constantly reviewing and refining my approach. Even when I'm listening back to episodes, I need to say to myself, do I talk too fast? Am I going all the time? And am I given a good, jumping on, jumping off point for the guests? So I do learn and grow from the experience as well. And as a teacher, you can never stop learning, and growing and improving along the way. So that's it for today's episode. This is episode 73, Creating Conversation. I just want to thank everyone, all those great people I just listed there who participated in this season. Next season, I'm excited. Some of you are going to flip when you see some of the people who are going to be coming on to speak with me as well on the podcast. And above all, I just want to send this final reminder that if you enjoy what we do here at the podcast, Creating Conversation, do consider liking and subscribing, sharing with family, friends, or anyone you think might be interested. Leave a comment, write to us, info@taskart.com. If you have anything you would like to share, that's TASQART.com. But also, at the heart, this podcast is only an auxiliary element to the academy. And what we do at the academy, it's not just about classes. You don't even have to be a student, but it provides you with a platform and a facility to hone your craft and to meet like-minded individuals as well. And hopefully it'll provide an incubation space for collaboration and for exciting new projects. So it's all about providing everyone with as much opportunity to quote unquote break in as much as possible. So I really hope you found value in today's episode, the podcast as a whole. If you would like to know more about TASQ or to participate in our upcoming semester in September, do reach out to me, info@taskart.com. In terms of monetization and stuff for the podcast, like it's not a forward-thinking strategy to make it a money earner, but the possibility of doing something like a Patreon, having some kind of a tip button, or possibly even looking for sponsorship as well. Because if we reach a significant audience, and we've kind of shown you there that we do have a decent enough consistent audience, as it were. At least if I can get some minor money behind it, that would just let me upgrade the microphone or something along the way. So if you are listening and would like to support the podcast, do reach out and we can see what we can do to reciprocate any support to you as well in the form of sponsoring a particular episode or a season or anything like that as well. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and Creating Conversations, copyright production, Macaulay Consultancy 2026. And I'll see you all in season 3. Thanks a million.